A 10-year-old girl stood outside a Hells Angels clubhouse at 11:43 p.m., rain hammering her pink beanie, crutches scraping wet concrete, clutching a stuffed koala like it was the only thing keeping her alive. For 14 months, she'd been trapped in a nightmare designed by the one man everyone trusted to stop nightmares. She'd tried 4 different authority figures. She'd watched her mother vanish 3 days ago. And in exactly 10 days, if nobody believed her, a $750,000 life insurance policy would pay out to the man who'd planned it all. What happened when she whispered those 6 words to the massive biker locking the gate, words that included the phrase, "they'll kill her," would expose a corruption so deep that 200 motorcycles would roll like thunder to answer. This is Olivia and Locke's story. And the part nobody saw coming is that the most dangerous-looking men in Phoenix became the gentlest protectors a terrified child ever knew. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Enjoy the story. "Please, my mom's gone. They'll kill her." The words came out barely louder than the rain. Olivia Mae Carter stood under the metal awning of the Hells Angels clubhouse on East Jefferson Street, water streaming off her pink beanie, her small hands white-knuckled on crutches that were slightly too tall for her 4'5" frame. Thunder rolled across Phoenix like a warning. Marcus Locke Reynolds had been checking the gate chain, making sure the lot was secure before the worst of the storm hit. He was a big man, 6'3", 245 pounds of former Army MP who'd spent 18 years with the club. Most people crossed the street when they saw him. The salt and pepper beard, the scar across his knuckles, the black leather vest with patches that told stories most folks didn't want to hear. But when he turned and saw her, everything stopped. She was tiny, soaked through, one ankle wrapped in an ace bandage that had gone gray with dirt and rain. The crutches made a sound he'd never forget. Tap, scrape, like a heartbeat struggling to keep rhythm. And her eyes. Huge hazel eyes with dark half-moons underneath, staring up at him with a mix of terror and something else. Hope, maybe. Or the last stubborn thread of it. Locke crouched down slowly, deliberately, the way you approach a wounded animal. Made himself smaller. Made himself safe. He kept his hands visible, open, voice low and steady. "You're safe with us," he said. "We find your mom." The little girl's shoulders shook, not from cold, though she was drenched, from the kind of relief that comes when you've been drowning and someone finally throws you a rope. She clutched the stuffed koala tighter, a small gray thing, worn nearly bald in places, with button eyes that had seen too much. "I tried," Olivia whispered. Her voice cracked on the words. "I tried so many people." 47 minutes earlier, Olivia had been standing in the Desert Spin 24-hour laundromat on North 24th Street. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects. Industrial dryers thumped in rhythm, creating a drumbeat of normalcy that made her situation feel even more impossible. It was 11:26 p.m. on a Thursday. The storm was just starting, fat drops smacking the glass door. 9 people scattered throughout the laundromat, heads down, phones glowing, everyone pretending the world outside their personal bubbles didn't exist. Olivia had approached a tired, middle-aged couple first. They were loading grocery bags into a cart, moving with the slow deliberation of people who'd worked a double shift and just wanted to get home. "Excuse me," she'd said softly. "Please, I need help. My mom—" The woman's eyes had flicked to the crutches, to the bruise on Olivia's cheekbone, yellow-purple, fading at the edges but still visible, to the way the girl's hoodie hung too big on her frame, second-hand and worn. The couple stepped around her, pulled their bags closer, kept walking, like she might grab them, like she was the threat. The rejection felt like a door slamming in her face. Olivia had limped to the convenience store next door. The clerk sat behind bulletproof glass, scrolling his phone. When she'd tapped on the window, he'd looked up, annoyed, pointed at a "no loitering" sign, mimed "go" with his hand. Didn't even open the door. Didn't even ask what she needed. The third rejection came from a security guard in a rain poncho, smoking under an awning. He'd laughed once when she'd approached, actually laughed, and called her a little hustler, told her to try a shelter while turning his back. Like this was a game. Like she was scamming. But the fourth rejection was the one that broke something inside her. A white van had pulled up to the laundromat parking lot. Church outreach volunteers, unloading boxed sandwiches and bottled water. 3 people in matching t-shirts that read, "Serving His Light." Olivia had thought, finally, church people. They'll help. She'd hobbled over, the crutches making that awful tap-scrape sound on wet concrete. "Please," she'd said, "I need help. Someone took my mom and I don't know where she is and the police won't—" "Sweetie, slow down." The woman had knelt, but her eyes were already calculating, already judging. "Are you a runaway? What's your real name?" "I'm not. It's Olivia, and I'm not lying. Please, he said he'd—" "Obedience keeps kids safe, honey." The woman had stood, crossing her arms. "I think you need to go home and pray about this. Running away never solves anything." They'd driven off, left her standing there in the rain with half a sandwich they'd tossed at her feet like she was a stray dog. And that's when Olivia understood. Nobody was going to believe her. Nobody who looked safe was actually safe. The system that was supposed to protect children had become the system that protected the man hurting her. She'd walked 1.8 miles in the rain, crossed a flooded intersection by stepping on the curb lip, water rushing around her ankles, stopped every 20 or 30 steps to catch her breath, count to 3, keep moving. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The clubhouse had been her last shot. The gate was about to lock. She'd seen the man checking the chain and thought, if this doesn't work, I'm out of options. Now, standing under that awning with Marcus Reynolds crouched in front of her, the story poured out. Not all at once, in stages, in layers of truth that got worse with each revelation. "I tried the police," Olivia said first. Her voice was soft, rushed, cracking on certain words. "But they laughed, told me to go home. My ankles hurt and I'm scared and nobody will listen." Locke pulled a clean towel from inside the clubhouse door, wrapped it around her shoulders, gentle, like she was made of glass. "Keep talking," he said. "I'm listening." "There's this man, Captain Holloway." The name came out bitter, soaked in months of fear. "He said he'd help my mom. He was nice at first, but then he grabbed my wrist, hard, and he pushed me. I fell down the stairs and that's how—" She gestured at her ankle. Locke's jaw tightened. The scar on his knuckles went white. "When was this?" 3 days ago. He locked Mom somewhere and now she's gone and I can't find her and—" Olivia's breath hitched. The stuffed koala shook in her hands. "And?" Locke's voice stayed steady, calm, but there was steel underneath. This was the moment. The bombshell. The thing Olivia had been too terrified to say to anyone else, because saying it out loud made it real. "I heard him on the phone." The words tumbled out fast, desperate. 3 weeks ago, late at night. I was behind the couch pretending to sleep and he thought I couldn't hear, but I could. He said, "She's scared. That keeps her quiet." And then he said— Her voice dropped to almost nothing. 10 days and the policy pays. Locke went very still. He told someone my mom is stored at the body shop, and if I talk, I'll join her. Olivia looked up at him with those exhausted hazel eyes. It's been 3 weeks since I heard that, which means 7 days left. Maybe less. What she didn't know was that Locke's niece had died 4 years ago. Domestic violence call that went wrong. Cops showed up too late, asked the wrong questions, believed the wrong person. By the time anyone figured out the truth, she was gone. He'd sworn that day he'd never let it happen again. Not if he could stop it. In this club, Locke said quietly, a kid asking for help isn't a problem. She's a duty. You don't have to be brave alone anymore. I give you my word, we move tonight. He wrapped a dry blanket around her shoulders, guided her inside with a hand hovering near her back, never grabbing, just protecting, and then he pulled out his phone. The call lasted 43 seconds. "Iron, it's Locke." William Iron Kincaid was 61 years old. He'd been with the club since before Locke was born. Soft-spoken, quick to decide, and he treated protecting kids like a sacred rule, not a favor. "I need every brother within 50 miles at the clubhouse. Now." There was a brief pause. You could hear Iron's breath, steady and measuring. "What's going on?" "Captain Derek Holloway, Phoenix PD, Special Ops, has a 10-year-old girl's mother stashed somewhere and a murder plot tied to a $750,000 life insurance policy. Timeline 7 days. We're not waiting for cops to take their time on this one." Another pause. Shorter this time. "Say no more. We're coming." The line went dead, and that was it. No questions about proof or evidence, no concerns about legal complications, just immediate, unquestioning commitment, because that's what brotherhood meant. When a kid needed help and the system had failed, you didn't debate. You moved. Locke turned back to Olivia, who'd been watching him with wide eyes. "How many people are coming?" she whispered. "Enough," Locke said. "You eat something. We'll figure this out." What he didn't tell her yet was that by dawn, 200 motorcycles would line the asphalt in perfect formation. 3 Arizona chapters responding to Iron's call. Because a corrupt cop holding a child's mother for insurance money wasn't just one man's crime. It was an attack on everything they believed in. But first, they needed Olivia's full story. Inside the clubhouse, the air smelled like leather, coffee, and motor oil. Olivia sat on a worn couch, the stuffed koala, Scout, she called him, still clutched tight. Locke brought her a sandwich and a bottle of water. She ate slowly, like she wasn't used to food being freely given. 3 other brothers were already there. They'd been finishing up maintenance work when Locke had brought Olivia in, and now they gathered around, careful not to crowd, letting her set the pace. "This is Chalk," Locke said, gesturing to a man in his early 60s with kind eyes and graying temples. He used to be a school counselor. He's good at listening. Chalk pulled up a chair, sat down slow. Hey, Olivia, you're doing really brave by being here. Can you tell us more about Captain Holloway? How'd he end up in your life? Olivia's hands shook slightly as she set down the sandwich. He started coming around about 14 months ago, she said. Mom worked at a check cashing place downtown, and she saw things. Numbers that didn't add up. People dropping off packages. She told her manager she didn't want to be involved anymore. Involved in what? Chalk's voice stayed gentle. Import business. Olivia said it carefully, like she'd heard adults use those words. That's what they called it. But Mom said it was bad stuff. And when she refused to run numbers anymore, they got mad. And Holloway? He showed up saying he'd protect us, said he was investigating the business and we needed to report everything through him. Mom trusted him at first. Olivia's voice got smaller. He seemed nice, professional. He'd drive us places, help with groceries, tell Mom she was doing the right thing. When did that change? Locke asked from where he stood near the door. About 3 months in. He started controlling things. He'd screen Mom's calls, told her friends not to come over because it wasn't safe, drove me to appointments and told the doctors what to write down. And then, her breath caught. Then he started disciplining me, said I was lying when I told my teacher about the bruises. He grabbed my wrist so hard it left marks. She pushed up the sleeve of her hoodie. Red, purple fingerprint rings circled her right wrist like a bracelet of violence. Chalk's expression didn't change, but his eyes went hard. He pulled out a phone, took photos with Olivia's quiet permission. Evidence. Mom tried to leave twice, Olivia continued. The first time, Holloway showed up with this folder, said Mom had been flagged, and if she didn't cooperate, child services would take me away. The second time, she swallowed. The second time, Mom disappeared. 3 days ago. He told me she'd run off and abandoned me, but I know that's a lie. Because you heard him on the phone, Locke said. Olivia nodded. 3 weeks ago. I couldn't sleep. I heard his voice from the kitchen. He was talking to someone, phone on speaker. He said, she's scared. That keeps her quiet. Then, 10 days and the policy pays. And, your woman is stored at the body shop, don't move her yet. The room went silent, except for the rain hammering the roof. Did you record it? This came from a younger brother near the back. Lean, tattooed, laptop bag over his shoulder. They called him Pixel. Olivia reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out an old prepaid flip phone, scratched and battered. I did, she whispered. The audio's scratchy, but you can hear the 10 days part clear. Pixel took the phone carefully, like it was evidence at a crime scene. Which it was. Locke's phone buzzed. Text from Iron. First crew ETA 40 minutes. Get her story documented. We'll need every detail. Olivia, Chalk said gently. We're going to ask you some hard questions now. About where you've been living. What you've tried. Who else knows? Can you do that? She nodded, small and determined. And so she told them everything. The apartment was at 1847 East Van Buren Street, Apt 3C. Holloway had moved them there 8 months ago, called it protective housing, while the investigation was ongoing. But it wasn't protection. It was a cage. 2 bedrooms, but one room was stripped nearly empty. Just a mattress on the floor. No toys, no photos. The door locked from the outside. Olivia showed them the picture she'd taken on the flip phone. A deadbolt, installed backwards. The kitchen cabinet where food was kept had a padlock. Holloway controlled when Olivia ate. Mostly crackers, instant noodles, nothing fresh. She'd lost weight. Her ribs showed through her shirt. "Bathroom?" Chalk asked. No lock. And no toothbrush. No clean towels for a week. Olivia looked down. Ashamed, though none of this was her fault. "School?" He said I was being home-schooled for safety. Filed paperwork. But he never actually taught me anything. Just kept me inside when he was gone. Locke's hands curled into fists. 12 years as an MP, 18 years in the club, and he'd seen a lot of evil. But hearing a 10-year-old describe systematic imprisonment by a cop, that hit different. "You said you tried to tell people," Chalk prompted. "Walk us through that." Olivia's face crumpled slightly. This part hurt. "First, I told the school counselor. 9 months ago, before Holloway pulled me out of school. Mrs. Patterson. She saw bruises on my arms and asked about them. I told her the truth. She said she'd call someone." "And?" "The next day, this officer showed up at school. Smiling, professional, wearing a suit. He talked to Mrs. Patterson in private. Then he came and talked to me. Very nice. Asked if everything was okay at home. I was too scared to say anything with him there. He left. The report vanished." "You're sure?" "Mrs. Patterson wouldn't look at me after that. Like she was scared." Strike one against the system. "What else?" Locke asked. 4 months ago, Mom tried to file a report at the local precinct about Holloway's threats, the harassment. They delayed the paperwork, said they'd get back to her. Then they warned her she could be charged with false reporting if she kept wasting resources. Strike two. "And 3 days ago, when you hurt your ankle, you went to urgent care?" Olivia nodded. "The nurse there, her name was Linda, I think. She tried to photograph my wrist marks. But someone called the clinic while we were there. Linda's supervisor pulled her into the back. When she came out, she said she couldn't help me. Told me to go home. Later, I heard she got reassigned." Strike three. The system hadn't just failed. It had been weaponized against them. "One more thing," Olivia said quietly. "There was a neighbor. Mrs. Benton, apartment 2B. She heard me crying the night Holloway pushed me down the stairs. She called 911. But when the police came, Holloway was there in uniform. Told them it was a family matter he was handling. They left. And 2 days later, Mrs. Benton got a code violation notice, and someone threatened her to keep quiet." Chalk looked at Locke. Locke looked at the brothers gathered around. Now you might be thinking, a Hells Angels clubhouse finds out about a corrupt cop abusing a kid, and their first move is to grab bats and storm his house. That's not the story you expected, is it? And maybe years ago that's exactly what would have happened. But these men weren't kids anymore. They'd learned that real justice required strategy, documentation, and overwhelming proof. You didn't win against corrupt cops by becoming the criminals they'd call you. You won by being smarter, more disciplined, more thorough. Locke's phone buzzed again. Iron. Switchback's coming. He'll know how to navigate this. Switchback. Real name, David Cross. 58 years old, ex-cop himself. 22 years on the force before he'd blown the whistle on evidence tampering and been forced out. He knew exactly how dirty cops operated, how they covered tracks, how they manipulated the system. If anyone could figure out how to take down Derek Holloway legally, it was him. By dawn, this clubhouse would be full, and they'd have a plan. But first, Olivia needed to know she was safe. "Listen to me," Locke said, crouching down to her eye level again. "You're staying here tonight. We've got a room upstairs with a lock on the inside. You'll have food, clean clothes, a shower if you want. Nobody touches that door without your permission." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears. Relief tears. "And tomorrow," she whispered, "tomorrow we find your mom, and we make sure Derek Holloway never hurts anyone again." He held out his hand. She took it, her small fingers barely wrapped around two of his. Outside, the thunder rolled closer. The storm was building. But inside the clubhouse, surrounded by leather and steel and men who'd made a promise, Olivia May Carter felt something she hadn't felt in 14 months. Safe. By dawn, the Phoenix sky was bruised purple and orange, storm clouds breaking apart to reveal hard sunlight. And in the parking lot of the Hells Angels clubhouse, 200 motorcycles lined the asphalt in perfect formation. 4 chapters: Tucson, Mesa, Scottsdale, and the main Phoenix crew. They'd arrived in waves throughout the night, engines cutting through the rain like thunder answering thunder. Men ranging from their late 20s to early 70s, all wearing their cuts, all answering the same call. A child needed help. The system had failed. Time was running out. Olivia had slept 4 hours in the upstairs room, the door locked from the inside like Locke had promised. When she'd come downstairs at 6:47 a.m., the clubhouse had been transformed into a command center. Maps spread across tables, laptops open, brothers on phones taking notes, cross-referencing information. And standing at the center of it all was Switchback. David Cross looked like what he was, a man who'd spent 2 decades inside the system and knew every crack in its foundation. Late 50s, steel-gray hair, reading glasses perched on his nose, arms crossed as he listened to the recording Pixel had pulled from Olivia's flip phone. The audio was scratchy, but clear enough. "She's scared. That keeps her quiet. 10 days and the policy pays. Your woman is stored at the body shop. Don't move her yet." Switchback's jaw tightened. He'd heard a lot of evil in his career, but there was something particularly cold about the casual tone. Like Holloway was discussing a dinner reservation, not a kidnapping and murder plot. "That's enough for probable cause," Switchback said, "but we're not calling Phoenix PD. Half of them are probably compromised, and the other half won't believe us without overwhelming proof." "So what do we do?" Locke asked. "We gather evidence so airtight that when we do go to authorities, state police, FBI, whoever's clean, they have no choice but to act immediately." Switchback pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. "I've been making calls. Here's what we know so far." He ticked off points on his fingers. Derek Holloway, 44, captain in special operations. 15 years on the force. Spotless record on paper. But when you dig deeper, patterns emerge. High turnover of partners, 6 in 8 years. 3 different partners reassigned after questioning his methods. One whistleblower had a sudden car accident that ended his career. "Convenient," Iron murmured. The club president stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the sun rise. "There's more," Switchback continued. In 2021, Holloway's first wife, Melissa Holloway, died of what was ruled an accidental overdose. She was 36. No history of drug use, inconsistent toxicology notes, but the investigation was handled internally and closed within 2 weeks. Olivia, sitting on the couch with Scout clutched tight, looked up sharply. "He did this before?" Switchback's expression softened when he looked at her. "I think so, sweetheart. And there was a life insurance policy on Melissa, too. Paid out $320,000. The policy had been updated 7 weeks before her death, with Holloway as sole beneficiary." The room went cold. "That's the pattern," Locke said quietly. "He's done this before. He knows how to work the system." "But this time," Switchback said, "he made mistakes. He underestimated a 10-year-old girl with a flip phone and the courage to ask for help." The plan unfolded with military precision. First, they needed to locate Jennifer Carter. Olivia had heard "body shop" in the phone call, and Switchback had already identified 3 auto body shops with known cartel connections in Phoenix. Top of the list, Southside Auto Body and Paint, owned by a man with ties to the same import business Jennifer had been trying to escape. Second, they needed witness statements. People who'd seen but stayed silent, whose guilt might now motivate them to speak. Third, they needed financial records, insurance policies, bank transfers, anything tying Holloway to the money motive. And fourth, this was critical, they needed to do all of it without giving Holloway warning. No confrontation until they had every piece of evidence locked down. "We've got brothers who can handle each part," Iron said. "Doc, you take medical liaison. We'll need someone who can evaluate Jennifer's condition when we find her. Pixel, you're on digital evidence. Switchback, you coordinate with any clean law enforcement we can find. Locke, you stay with Olivia. She's the primary witness." There was a brief pause. 23 men in that room, all waiting. Iron looked around the table. "All in favor of full mobilization?" For a moment, nothing. Just the ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant sound of traffic outside. Then every single hand went up. Not a moment's hesitation. Not a single dissenting voice. 23 men voting unanimously to help a woman and child they'd never met. Because that's what this was about. Not territory, not revenge. Just the simple, stubborn refusal to let evil win when you had the power to stop it. "Let's ride," Iron said. "I know what you might be imagining. 200. Hell's Angels roaring up to a body shop, fists ready, chaos brewing. And maybe years ago, that's exactly what would have happened. But this generation had learned something crucial. Real power isn't loud. It's disciplined. It's strategic. It's showing up in overwhelming numbers and then standing perfectly still, letting the weight of your presence do the talking. The formation pulled out at 8:15 a.m. 4 rows, perfectly synchronized. They rolled through Phoenix like a storm, leather jackets bearing the same insignia, chrome gleaming in the morning sun. The rumble started low, distant, like thunder on the horizon. Then it grew into a roar that shook windows and set off car alarms. 200 engines in unison, a deafening, beautiful thunder. People on the sidewalks stopped and stared. Some pulled out phones to record. Others stepped back, uncertain whether to be afraid or amazed. They parked in formation across from Southside Auto Body and Paint. Engines died almost in unison, the sudden silence after all that noise feeling heavy and expectant. Then they waited. Not a protest fueled by anger. A peaceful stand. 200 bikers standing there, not moving, not shouting, simply present. Inside the body shop, Frank Delgado watched through the grimy window. He was 74, a retired mechanic who'd been working part-time at Southside for 3 years. And in those 3 years, he'd seen things. Couriers arriving at odd hours. Packages transferred in the back bay. Money changing hands. And 3 weeks ago, a woman brought in unconscious, carried to the storage room in the back. He'd told himself it wasn't his business. He needed the job. He was too old to be a hero. But now, staring at 200 motorcycles and the men standing beside them with their arms crossed and their eyes fixed on the building, Frank felt something shift inside him. 2 brothers approached the door, Switchback, and a man they called Foundry. 67. Gray beard, the kind of presence that commanded respect without saying a word. Frank opened the door before they could knock. "You're here about the woman," he said. It wasn't a question. "We are," Switchback replied. "And we need your help." Frank Delgado's testimony came out in a rush, 3 years of guilt pouring out all at once. "I saw them bring her in," he said, hands shaking as he spoke. 3 days ago, around 2 a.m., Captain Holloway and another man, someone I didn't recognize. The woman was unconscious. They carried her to the storage unit in back, the one we're not supposed to open. "You're sure it was Holloway?" Switchback asked, phone recording every word. "Positive. I've seen him around the neighborhood before. Everyone knows he's connected. You don't ask questions." Frank's voice broke slightly. "I heard her crying later, calling for someone. I wanted to help, I swear I did, but I was scared. Holloway told the owner that anyone who talked would have an accident, and I've seen what happens to people who cross him." "When did you last hear her?" "Yesterday evening. She was asking for water, begging for someone to call her daughter." Olivia, listening from where she sat in Locke's truck parked across the street, started crying. Locke's hand rested gently on her shoulder. "She's alive," he said quietly. "We're going to get her out." Frank led them to the storage room. The door was locked, industrial padlock. Foundry produced a bolt cutter from his saddlebag. One clean snap, and the lock fell away. Inside, Jennifer Carter lay on a thin mattress on the concrete floor. 42 years old, dark hair matted with sweat, wrists zip-tied to a pipe. She was conscious but weak, dehydrated, bruising visible on her arms and face. Doc, real name Thomas Wright, 72, Vietnam-era combat medic, was inside within seconds. Calm hands, quick assessment. "Dehydration, possible concussion, malnutrition," he said, cutting the zip ties with medical scissors. "She needs a hospital, but she's stable. She's going to make it." Jennifer's eyes focused slowly. "Olivia," she whispered. "Where's—" "Safe," Doc said firmly. "Your daughter is safe. And she's the one who saved you." While Doc stabilized Jennifer, Switchback and Pixel were executing the second phase, gathering financial evidence. Pixel had been busy all night, legally accessing public records, cross-referencing insurance databases, pulling bank information through contacts in the financial sector who owed the club favors. What he found was damning. A life insurance policy on Jennifer Carter, filed 10 months ago, right after Holloway had moved them to protective housing. Amount? $750,000, with an accidental death rider that would pay out double in certain circumstances. Beneficiary? Derek Holloway. Bank records showing 3 deposits into Holloway's account over the past year, totaling $180,000, labeled consulting fees. The deposits traced back to shell companies linked to the cartel operation Jennifer had tried to escape. And tucked in the same folder beneath the current policy was another insurance document. An older one. A policy on Melissa Holloway, Derek's late wife, who had died of complications from pneumonia in 2021. That policy had paid out $320,000. The date of her death was exactly 2 months after the policy had been taken out. "He's done this twice," Pixel said, showing the documents to Switchback. "And he was about to do it a 3rd time." Switchback's expression was granite. "We've got him, but we need witness statements to seal it." The witnesses came forward one by one, guilt and relief mixing in their testimonies. Louise Benton, 68, lived in apartment 2B at 1847 East Van Buren. She'd been Jennifer and Olivia's neighbor for 8 months, and she'd heard everything. "I heard the fight," Louise said, sitting in the clubhouse with a brother taking notes. Her hands shook as she held a cup of tea. 3 nights ago, around midnight. Shouting, a crash. Then I heard Olivia screaming. I knew something was wrong. I called 911. What happened? Police came. But so did Holloway. He must have been listening to the scanner. He was in uniform, had his badge, told the officers it was a domestic situation he was already handling. They left without even checking on Jennifer or Olivia. Louise's voice cracked. The next day I got a code violation notice. Someone left a note on my door. "Mind your business or you'll regret it." I was terrified. I'm 68 years old living alone. I didn't know what to do. "You did the right thing calling 911, the brother said gently. "And you're doing the right thing now." Sandra Whitmore, 54, was one of the church outreach volunteers who'd turned Olivia away at the laundromat. She'd come to the clubhouse that morning after seeing the story circulating on social media. Someone had posted video of the 200 bikes rolling through Phoenix, and word spread fast. "I didn't know," Sandra said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought she was making it up. I thought she was just another runaway looking for a handout. But I recognized Captain Holloway from the donation events. He's been at our church fundraisers, posing with kids, writing checks. I couldn't imagine. I should have listened. I should have looked at her bruises and listened to what she was saying." "You're listening now," Chalk said. He'd been the one to take her statement. "That matters." Calvin Rhodes, 33, was a bank teller at First Phoenix Credit Union. He'd been the one to process the consulting deposits into Holloway's account, and something about them had bothered him. "The amounts were always odd," Calvin explained. "Not round numbers, $62,450, $59,800, $57,750, like they'd been calculated to stay just under reporting thresholds. And the source companies, I looked them up out of curiosity. Shell corporations, no real business operations. I flagged it internally, but my supervisor told me to drop it, said Captain Holloway was a valued customer and above reproach." "Did you document the flag?" "I did. Email chain, timestamps, everything. I kept copies at home just in case." Calvin pulled out a folder. It's all here. By noon, they had everything. Witness statements, financial records, the recording, medical documentation from Doc showing Jennifer's injuries, Frank Delgado's testimony placing Holloway at the scene. Switchback made the call to the Arizona State Police Criminal Investigation Unit, bypassing Phoenix PD entirely. He knew a sergeant there, Maria Santos, someone he'd worked with years ago, someone he trusted to be clean. Santos, it's David Cross. I need you to listen very carefully, because I'm about to hand you the case of your career. He laid it all out. Every piece of evidence, every witness, the insurance fraud, the previous victim, the systematic abuse, the cartel connection. There was a long silence on the other end. How fast can you get me copies of everything? Santos asked. I can be at your office in 30 minutes. Make it 20. I'm calling the FBI now. At 2:37 p.m., a joint task force, State Police and FBI, rolled up to 1847 East Van Buren Street, apartment 3C. They had a warrant. They had evidence. They had witnesses ready to testify. And they had 200 bikers parked 2 blocks away, engines off, waiting. Derek Holloway was at home. When they knocked, he opened the door wearing a plain gray t-shirt and jeans, a dish towel in his hands. He'd been washing lunch dishes, the scent of soap and bacon grease hanging in the air. He looked confused, annoyed, like a man interrupted during a normal afternoon. Can I help you? He asked, that calm, professional tone in place. Captain Derek Holloway, you're under arrest for kidnapping, attempted murder, insurance fraud, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit murder, Agent Santos said. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. For just a second, maybe 3 heartbeats, Holloway's mask slipped. His eyes went cold. Calculating, looking for an angle, an escape, a way to spin this. But he saw the number of agents, saw the warrant in Santos's hand, saw the cameras recording everything. The mask came back, smooth, calm, the concerned public servant. There's been a misunderstanding, he said. I'm happy to cooperate, but I think you'll find— Save it, Santos interrupted. We have the recording. We have the witnesses. We have the insurance policies. We found Jennifer Carter locked in a storage unit, and we know you put her there. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. They cuffed him on his own doorstep, face scraping against the concrete steps as they secured his wrists. The same hands that had grabbed Olivia, locked Jennifer away, killed Melissa, now bound behind his back. The neighbors watched from windows and doorways. Some filmed on their phones. Others whispered. Captain Holloway, the man who'd spoken at Rotary Club meetings and smiled in church photos and posed with kids at charity events, was being arrested for attempting to murder a woman for insurance money. The same truck he'd used to drive Jennifer and Olivia to appointments sat in the driveway to serve and protect visible on the bumper sticker. Evil had worn an ordinary face. A monster had looked like a neighbor. And if a 10-year-old girl hadn't been brave enough to ask for help, he would have gotten away with it. They read him his rights right there in the driveway. Charges stacked up. Felony kidnapping, attempted murder, child endangerment, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, official misconduct. Bail was set at $2 million. high enough that a man who'd stolen from his victims and had nothing to show for it but a luxury watch and a boat deposit wouldn't be making it anytime soon. The trial would come later. 3 days in court, evidence laid out piece by piece. The recording played. The witnesses testifying. The insurance documents examined. Jennifer's medical records. Olivia's testimony, delivered in that soft, cracking voice that made the jury sit forward and listen. It took less than 2 hours for them to deliberate. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing. 8 years in state prison for the kidnapping and fraud. No eligibility for parole for 5 years. Restitution ordered. Protective restraining order filed before he'd even made bail. But that came later. Right now, at 3:04 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, Derek Holloway sat in the back of a state police car, hands cuffed, watching his life unravel. And 2 blocks away, Olivia Mae Carter sat in Locke's truck, wrapped in a blanket, Scout clutched tight, waiting for news. When Locke got the text from Switchback, he's in custody. Jennifer's at the hospital, stable. It's over. He showed Olivia the screen. She didn't cry, didn't celebrate, just sat there for a long moment, processing. Then she whispered, "Can I see my mom now?" "Yeah, sweetheart," Locke said. "Let's go see your mom." Justice had been served. But justice wasn't the ending. It was only the beginning. Phoenix Children's Hospital, room 314. Jennifer Carter sat propped up in the bed, IV in her arm, oxygen monitor beeping steadily. Her face was pale, bruises dark against her skin, but her eyes were alert. And when Olivia came through the door, tap, scrape of those crutches on linoleum, Jennifer's face crumpled. "Baby," she whispered. Olivia crossed the room faster than she should have on a sprained ankle. Locke caught the crutches before they clattered to the floor, and then Olivia was in her mother's arms, Scout pressed between them, both of them crying. "I'm sorry," Jennifer said over and over. "I'm so sorry, baby. I tried to protect you and You didn't do anything wrong," Olivia said fiercely. "He lied. He trapped us. But I found help, Mom. I found people who listened." Jennifer looked up at Locke, who stood by the door giving them space. Her eyes filled with a different kind of tears. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know how to—" "You don't need to thank me," Locke said quietly. "You've got a brave daughter. She saved both of you." Over the next hour, Doc came by to review Jennifer's medical chart with the hospital staff. Dehydration, treated. Concussion, mild. Monitoring for 24 hours. Bruising and minor lacerations, healing. Malnutrition, she'd been given 1 meal a day for 3 days, would require nutritional support and follow-up. "But she's going to be fine," Doc told Olivia, crouching down to her level. "Your mom's tough. Takes after you, I think." While Jennifer recovered, the brothers went to work on everything else. Chalk, the ex-counselor, arranged for trauma therapy, 2 sessions a week at a clinic that specialized in abuse survivors, fully covered by a victim's assistance fund he helped Jennifer access. First appointment scheduled for the following Tuesday. Pixel handled the digital side. Restraining order filed electronically, court date scheduled, all legal documentation organized into folders both physical and digital. He set up a new email account for Jennifer, new phone number, made sure Holloway's contacts were blocked across every platform. Switchback liaised with the state police to ensure Jennifer and Olivia were listed as protected witnesses. Their names would be kept out of public records where possible. Additional security measures put in place, and Foundry, the elder statesman with connections spanning decades, made calls to people who owed him favors. By Monday morning, Jennifer had a job lined up. Administrative work at a law firm whose senior partner had once been helped by the club. 40 hours a week, benefits included, starting salary enough to rebuild on. By Tuesday afternoon, they had housing. A 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood 15 minutes from Olivia's new school. First month's rent and security deposit covered by a fund the club had raised. $42,000 from chapters across Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico, collected in less than 72 hours, when word spread about what had happened. Locke drove them to see it on Wednesday. 1847. East Van Buren was behind them now, literally and figuratively. This new place, 2156 North Willow Street, apartment 12F, had windows that opened, doors that locked from the inside only. A kitchen with no padlocks. Olivia stood in the middle of the empty living room, crutches resting against the wall, and just stared. "It's ours," she whispered. "It's yours," Locke confirmed. "Lease is in your mom's name. Nobody can take it away." Jennifer pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. "I don't know how we'll ever repay." "You don't repay it," Locke said. "You live, you heal, you let Olivia be a kid again. That's the repayment." The brothers had furnished the place too. Not new stuff, but good stuff. Donated furniture from families in the club. A couch that was only 2 years old. A kitchen table with 4 matching chairs. 2 beds with clean mattresses. Towels. Dishes. A small TV. And in Olivia's room, on the freshly made bed, sat a gift. A new stuffed animal. A gray wolf with bright eyes and soft fur. A card attached. "Scout needs a friend. Welcome home, the brothers." Olivia clutched both Scout and the wolf, and for the first time in 14 months, she felt safe enough to smile. That first week was about logistics, doctor appointments, therapy intake sessions, school enrollment. Olivia would start at Willow Creek Elementary the following Monday, 5th grade, age-appropriate placement with accommodations for her ankle while it healed. The brothers rotated shifts checking in, not hovering, not intrusive, just present. Locke stopped by twice to help Jennifer figure out the bus routes to her new job. Chalk dropped off groceries and helped Olivia with reading assignments she'd missed during the months of homeschooling. Pixel set up their internet and showed Jennifer how to use the safety apps he'd installed. 1-button emergency contacts, GPS sharing with trusted numbers. Doc came by Friday to check Olivia's ankle. The swelling had gone down significantly. The bruises were fading from purple to yellow-green. "Another 2 weeks and you'll be off the crutches," he said. 3 weeks and you'll be running again." "I don't think I remember how to run," Olivia said softly. Doc looked at her with those kind, weathered eyes. "You will. Your body remembers. You just need time to feel safe enough to try." The second week, Jennifer started her job. She was nervous that first morning, hands shaking as she buttoned her blouse, afraid she'd forgotten how to be normal. But the law firm was kind. Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia, had been briefed on the basics of Jennifer's situation and made sure she had support. Quiet desk in the corner, regular breaks, No questions about the past she wasn't ready to answer. Jennifer came home that first day exhausted, but with something new in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or just the absence of constant fear, which felt almost the same. Olivia started school on Monday. Locke drove her. She'd asked if he would, said she felt safer with him there, and walked her to the front office. The principal, Mrs. Alvarez, shook Olivia's hand gently. "We're glad to have you here. Mr. Harrison's 5th grade class is wonderful. If you need anything at all, you come find me. Okay?" Olivia nodded, gripping Scout in one hand and her new wolf in the other. Locke knelt down. "You've got this. And if you need me, your mom has my number. I'm 20 minutes away." "Okay," Olivia whispered. That first day was hard. The other kids stared at the crutches, at the new girl who showed up in November instead of August. But her teacher, Mr. Harrison, introduced her kindly and assigned a student buddy to help her navigate the building. At lunch, Olivia sat alone at first, uncertain. Then a girl with red braids and freckles sat down across from her. "I'm Maya," the girl said. "You're Olivia, right? I like your stuffed animals. Are they your good luck charms?" Olivia looked down at Scout and the wolf. "Sort of. They're my protectors." "Cool," Maya said. "Want to sit with me and my friends tomorrow?" It was small. One invitation, one friendly face. But it was a start. 3 months is both forever and no time at all when you're healing from trauma. By January, Olivia's ankle had fully healed. The crutches sat in the closet now, unused. The bruises had faded to nothing. She'd gained 8 pounds, still underweight, but getting closer to healthy. Her hair was clean and trimmed, her clothes fit properly, and the dark circles under her eyes had lightened. She made the honor roll her first full semester. Straight A's in every subject except PE, where she was still building strength, and even there she earned a B+. Jennifer thrived, too. 3 months at the law firm, and she'd been promoted to senior administrator, managing schedules for 4 attorneys. Her paycheck was steady. The apartment stayed paid. She'd even started saving. Small amounts, but building. They had dinner together every night now. Real dinners, cooked in their own kitchen. Spaghetti, tacos, chicken and rice. Meals without locks, without fear, without someone controlling when and what they ate. And the brothers still checked in. Not every day anymore, but regularly. Locke came by every other Sunday, usually with takeout pizza. Chalk helped Olivia with a school project about personal heroes. She wrote about him and Locke and Doc, which made Chalk tear up. Pixel taught her basic coding, said she had a knack for it. In February, the club threw Olivia a birthday party at the clubhouse. She turned 11 surrounded by leather-clad bikers singing Happy Birthday off-key, a chocolate cake with 11 candles blazing, presents wrapped in newspaper comics because nobody knew how to wrap properly. She blew out the candles and made a wish. When Locke asked what she'd wished for, she said, "That other kids like me find people like you." That's when they formalized it. The Angels Watch program. A partnership between the 3 Arizona Hells Angels chapters and the state police, designed specifically for cases where the system failed. Corruption, compromised officials, children falling through cracks. A dedicated hotline. Brothers trained in trauma-informed response, direct connections to clean law enforcement, emergency housing funds, legal advocacy, educational support. In the first 6 months, Angel's Watch handled 17 cases. 12 involved children escaping abuse. 3 involved elderly victims of financial exploitation. 2 involved domestic violence where local police were compromised. 17 families found safety because one little girl had been brave enough to ask for help, and because a group of men society feared chose to be gentle instead. Now, this story isn't really about motorcycles or patches or scary-looking men with big hearts. It's about something simpler and more important than that. It's about the moment when you decide that indifference is no longer acceptable, when you stop assuming someone else will handle it, when you look at suffering and say, "Not on my watch." Louise Benton, the neighbor who heard Olivia crying, carried guilt for months. She told a reporter later, "I heard that child screaming and I called 911, but when they left without helping, I convinced myself I'd done enough. I hadn't. Doing enough meant finding another way. It meant not stopping until she was safe." Sandra Whitmore, the church volunteer who'd lectured Olivia about obedience, quit her outreach group and started volunteering at a children's advocacy center instead. "I was so focused on what I thought she should be," Sandra said, "that I didn't see what she actually was. A child in danger, telling the truth. I'll never make that mistake again." Frank Delgado, the mechanic who'd known Jennifer was locked in that storage room, testified at Holloway's trial, with tears streaming down his face. "I was afraid," he said on the stand. "But fear isn't an excuse for letting someone suffer when you have the power to help. There are Olivias everywhere, kids who need help but don't know how to ask, families trapped by people who are supposed to protect them, victims drowning while the system fails or looks away. And there are people like you, reading this, watching this, thinking, what could I possibly do? Here's the answer. You pay attention. When a child hesitates before answering, "How's home?" you ask again, gentler. When someone's story doesn't quite add up, bruises explained away, absences rationalized, you care enough to dig deeper. Wasum. When the system tells you to mind your business, you ask yourself, is protecting someone's life more important than being comfortable? You don't need 200 motorcycles to change a story. You just need to be willing to listen when someone whispers for help, to believe them when everyone else has called them a liar, to stand up when standing aside would be easier. Locke told a reporter 6 months after Olivia's rescue. People see the leather, the bikes, the tough guy image, and they think we're criminals. But we're fathers, uncles, grandfathers. We've got daughters and sons and nieces and nephews. And we remember what it feels like when the world doesn't protect the people who need it most. So we do it ourselves. Iron, the club president, said it even simpler. A kid asks for help, you help. It's not complicated. 1 year after that rainy Thursday night, when Olivia limped up to the clubhouse, she stood on stage at Willow Creek Elementary's Honors Assembly, student council representative, volunteer coordinator for the school's food drive, straight A student. She wore jeans and a purple hoodie, not oversized anymore, but fitted. Clean, chosen because she liked it, not because it was the only thing available. Her hair was healthy and trimmed. Her cheeks had color. She'd grown 2 inches and gained 15 pounds. She smiled when she talked now, not that tight, scared grimace, but real smiles that reached her eyes. Jennifer sat in the front row, watching her daughter receive a certificate for academic excellence. Locke sat beside her, along with Chalk, Doc, and Pixel. They'd all come to see her. When Olivia stepped up to the microphone to give her speech about community service, she looked right at them. "I learned something important this year," she said, her voice stronger now, not that whispered crack, but clear and steady. "I learned that heroes don't always look like what you expect. Sometimes they're scary on the outside because they've had to be tough to survive. But that doesn't mean they're not gentle where it counts." She paused, swallowed, continued. "I also learned that you don't have to be big or strong or powerful to change things. You just have to be brave enough to ask for help, and then brave enough to keep asking until someone listens. Because there are people out there who will listen. You just have to find them." After the ceremony, Olivia ran to Locke. Actually ran, no crutches, no limp, and hugged him tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for listening." Locke's voice was rough when he answered, "Thank you for being brave enough to ask." Behind them, Scout and the Grey Wolf sat in Olivia's backpack, still her protectors, still her comfort, but not her only comfort anymore. She had a home, a mom who was healing, friends at school, a future that didn't involve fear. And she had people, a whole community of people, who'd proven that when the system fails, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Derek Holloway served his sentence at Arizona State Prison Complex. In year 3, he was questioned about 2 other suspicious deaths connected to his previous cases. The investigation is ongoing. Jennifer Carter works as a paralegal now, promoted twice, respected by her colleagues. Thriving. She and Olivia live in a house they rent with an option to buy. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, a neighborhood where kids play in the street until the streetlights come on. The Angels Watch program expanded to Nevada and New Mexico. To date, it's handled 183 cases. 94 children found safety. 71 adults escaped domestic violence or exploitation. 18 families relocated to protected housing. 0 fatalities among participants. And Olivia? She wants to be a lawyer when she grows up. Said she's going to make sure the system works for kids like her, so they don't have to rely on finding a Hells Angels clubhouse in a storm. But until then, she volunteers at the Angels Watch hotline on Saturday mornings, answering calls alongside Chalk, listening to kids who are scared and alone. Because she knows what it feels like. And she knows that sometimes the most important thing you can say to someone is, "I believe you, and I'm going to help." For the first time since Captain Holloway had entered her life, Olivia May Carter felt safe. Not healed. Healing doesn't work that way. But safe. Seen. Worthy of protection. And in a world that had tried to silence her, she found her voice. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that courage comes in unexpected forms, and heroes don't always wear capes, please subscribe to Gentle Bikers. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below who your protector was, or what you wish someone had done when you needed help. Because these stories matter. They remind us that one voice can change everything. One person paying attention can save a life. One community choosing to act instead of looking away can restore faith in humanity itself. There are more stories like Olivia's. Stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Stories that prove that the scariest-looking person in the room might be exactly who you need when the world fails you. Tell me you stand with Olivia. Tell me you'll be someone who listens. And remember, the next time someone asks for help, believe them, because you might be the only person who does. Now, let me step out of the story for a moment to talk directly to you. If you see a child in immediate danger, bruises that don't match the story, a kid begging strangers for help, signs of starvation or confinement, you call 911 right that second. Not after you think about it, not tomorrow, now. For trafficking, it's the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-3737-888. And that line is staffed 24/7, every single day. For ongoing abuse or neglect that isn't an emergency this instant, you call Child Protective Services. Every state has a hotline. Elder abuse? Adult Protective Services handles that, same system. You don't need proof, just reasonable concern. I saw a child with unexplained injuries is enough. The call can be anonymous, and you're legally protected for reporting in good faith. Here's what matters. If you see something and stay silent, nothing changes. If you make the call, today, not next week, you give that child or elder a chance someone might show up. CPS is there to investigate, not punish you for caring. It takes 60 seconds. Make the call.